welcome to the Macro Podcast. Today I'm sitting here with Sergeant Major Andrew Porch. I'm really excited to just have you here today because one thing that we're going to be working on or talking stories about is just what the United States Army Pacific is all about, or what we learned is USARPAC.
Yeah, USARPAC.
So before we get started, I just want to say thank you for your service, for 20 years of service, active duty. And if someone didn't know about the United States Army Pacific, how would you explain it to them so that they could understand a little bit more about what you do?
Well, first off, thank you for having me today and giving me the chance to talk about the Army and what we do on a daily basis. U.S. Army Pacific is the land component forces for Indo-Pacific. It's a lot of jargon. What we are is we're about 110,000 soldiers across the Pacific, from the state of Washington to Korea, and then from Alaska down to the South Oceania in Pacific. So our role is that we ensure that we are interacting with partners across the globe to ensure deterrence from adversaries, but really just keeping a forward presence to make sure that we're always there to react if anything ever happens.
Talking about the security and everything, how big of a role does the Indo-Pacific play when it comes to U.S. security?
So it's Hawaii specifically is the gateway to the Pacific, and that's why our presence here is so important, and being a part of the community here and having that buy-in. But overall, what the Pacific stands for is 60% of the population. There's a lot of water, but individuals tend to live on land. So knowing those spots of land throughout the theater and knowing who to interact with and where we need to inject to support is a big thing that we do. The relationships that we build, if you look at Korea, today is the 75th anniversary of the start of the Korean War. Oh, wow. And since then, we've had that partnership on the peninsula. Their motto is Fight Tonight. So it's extremely important to us as the Army to build relationships across the theater and make sure that our allies and partners feel secure.
And how many countries are you working with, partnering?
So we work with approximately 36 countries, and we execute over 40 exercises a year. So I'd say around the Christmas time, we take a little need to rest and relax and spend time with our families. But the rest of the year, there's almost always an exercise going on, so we always have soldiers forward.
It was really interesting for me because this is all new for me to understand. What do you mean by exercises?
So it's a way for us to interact with our allies and partners, identify what some of their gaps and capabilities might be with their armed forces, and we also learn from them. So we learn about their culture, we learn about the way that they exercise, the way that they ensure that they're a part of their own communities, and we take stuff back as we give.
And I think for many of people who, especially for me being from Hawaii, born and raised in Hawaii, we're very familiar with the combat side of the Army. My interest is or question is about can you explain any of the humanitarian assistance or the disaster support that you provide as an Army as well?
Starting right here on the island, as early as last week, we were helping fight wildfires up on Schofield with our 25th Combat Aviation Brigade. Going to the Maui wildfires, we had an individual that fell in a volcano that a couple years ago that we went and got out. And then across the globe, what we're doing is, as part of our exercises, we're not just doing tactical things. We're building bridges, we're building roads, we are building schools. So our engineers and those type of units are also out supporting to ensure that our allies and partners are supported.
Yeah, can you kind of share a little bit about that side? Because for me, we don't hear about that, right? We only hear about mostly about the combat side. But I feel like those are the areas that really speaks to the communities of all the work that goes on outside of that area.
Yeah, something I should have touched on is, when we do these exercises, they're at the invite of the host nation. So when they're being planned and when they're deciding what operations are going to take place, we are going to focus on making sure that our soldiers are tactically proficient, but we're also going to see how we can support the host nation and, what's important to them to make sure that we're meeting their needs.
Yeah, when you talk about building roads and bridges, how much work actually goes into that? Because I can only imagine how much hands got to be in it and involved. Can you kind of share this a little bit more about that?
Yeah, so from my understanding, it starts at the top with senior leaders identifying, what the priorities are and what needs to be done. And then once you get down to that soldier level, they're literally out there with their equipment that they bring forward, and they're laying asphalt, or the engineers have their hammers and nails out, and they're going through the motion just like a regular construction worker would, to make sure that it's high quality and it's going to last for a long time.
Oh, wow. Along with like all the responsibilities that USARPAC has with taking care of or securing down half the globe, right? Along with those responsibilities, how do you stay connected with the local community here in Hawaii, being that you're based out of Fort Shafter, just at the headquarters, right?
So there's about 17 different Army units, like at minimum, that have like a major headquarters here on the island. So I know we have a U.S. Army Hawaii, which is the 2-star command that oversees everything. We have a partner in education program where every unit is assigned to a school throughout the island. We attend the neighborhood board. So I was here in 2019, and my first week they sent me out to Waialua to go talk at a neighborhood board, and it was a great experience because I went out there. We got to hear from the locals about some of their concerns. The full transparency, and they gave us a hard time out on the west side, but afterwards, they came up and they thanked us for our service, and they let us know that this is their chance to truly voice their opinions, because the police chief is there, local officials, stuff like that.
I think those are the time where those connections start happening, right? The collaborations and the conversations, even though they're tough to go through. But I think a lot of times as communities, we just want to be heard, and we want to make sure that we are recognized for the concerns that we have, because we do understand the amount of work that goes into securing the island and securing the Pacific and making sure all that is working. So it's one of those things where we do recognize the service, but at the same time, we want to be recognized as well, right?
Yeah, I mean, we don't take it for granted being able to, have our families come out with us to this, beautiful location in paradise. We have a responsibility to interact with the community to help bridge the military-civilian divide, to help them understand that, we are a part of the community. We are fathers, mothers, and brothers and sisters, and, we're helping coach Little League football and baseball, and, we're there right next to them.
Yeah, I grew up on Kailua's side, and there's a heavy military presence out there, and, some of my friends are from the military, and they had to move away and all this stuff. So it's understanding that, yes, we're people and we have work, we have jobs to do. And it kind of brings it down to more of a human level, right? Like, let's have a conversation, let's talk stories, and let's get to know one another, and work from there and finding what works best for us, right?
Yeah, and we're always looking for chances for our senior leaders to engage, but also our soldiers. An example is we just celebrated the Army's 250th birthday on June 14th, older than the nation itself, right? So as part of that, we had a couple events throughout the week. We hosted a polo match on Fort Shafter that was open to the public. Mr. Alan Ho, who was the CASA, the civilian aide to the Secretary of the Army at one time, Gold Star father. He came out and helped us host it, and then we did the community day on the 12th, where we went down to Fort DeRussy, and we had multiple pieces of military equipment. We had aircraft. We had working dogs out there giving demonstrations. We had some of our EOD teams, which deal with bomb disposal, out there with their robots and stuff like that. So it was a chance for us to really connect with the community. And then we ended it with a re-enlistment ceremony with the recruiters and the National Guard.
Cool. I think for me, it's talking about the soldiers and everything. And as you've learned being out in Hawaii, that the community is so really deeply tied to the land, community, identity, the culture. How do you, as USARPAC, how do you help encourage the soldiers and the organization to appreciate that a little bit more and to be more connected, and so they can understand where the community is coming from?
So it's a huge priority of ours. So when an individual gets to the island, the first thing they do is they sign in at the airport, whether they have family or not, and then they get assigned a date that they're going to report within 7 days. And one of the first classes they go through is a cultural class to help understand the history of Hawaii first. To help understand why some people might be frustrated with the military being here, with the past and everything like that, but identifying how to properly interact, what are some cultural norms that you wouldn't do, some of the local words just to understand, if you get called a howdy, maybe don't take so much offense to it, because it's not just talking about you, it's just you're an outsider, and that's okay, but it's your job to become an insider.
No, I think that's important that, because I didn't know that, those are the things that the community doesn't hear too much about, like when you're talking about the disaster relief and all the people, building the roads and helping out their allies and everything. there's those things that need to be celebrated, or at least recognized on your part, right? As a U.S. Army Pacific, one of the things that I've always been interested in is, how did you become involved with this?
So I was fresh out of high school. I was working in a dry cleaners. Didn't really know what I wanted to do in life. My friend went down to the recruiting station. And I said, "I'll go with you. I'll see about it." Looking back, I remember being in high school and the recruiters would come out and give the ASVAB, and I would look at it and say, "Do I have to take this?" And they're like, "No." I was like, "Fine," because I'm never joining the Army, right? That was my mindset as a 16-year-old. And then as I got out of high school and I started to mature a little more, I realized I need something that's going to open doors for me and set me up for success in life. So I joined the military. I originally joined as a 14 Tango, which is a Patriot air defense operator. So if you've seen what's going on over in Iran and their attack on Qatar, that job is what works those missiles to shoot down. So I actually knew somebody over there, and glad they're safe. But I did that for a couple of years, and I realized, now, am I going to stay in the military for 20 years, or am I going to get out? So I identified public affairs. So what that is like news writing, photography, and then as I move in rank, it was more like strategic communication and helping senior leaders get their message across. So best job in the Army. I guess we were talking earlier. I've been in 9 locations in the last 11 years. I've been with infantry. I've been with every job you can think of. So I've gotten to see what soldiers do on a daily basis and come back and tell their story.
Yeah. And what does that mean to you, seeing all the work that's going on within that USARPAC does do for the communities? What does that mean to you?
It hits me in the heart, because I know that being where I'm at in the level of command that I'm at, that if it's starting at the top, it should get down to the bottom, right? It's not a bottom driven up thing that is going to take time for leadership to understand, like some things do. Like RCG, General Ron Clark, he's been here multiple times. He was a company commander for 127 25th Infantry Division back in the early 90s. He was a 25th ID commander. He was the USARPAC chief of staff, so kind of ran the staff for USARPAC, and he also worked at Indo-Pacific. So he's been here multiple times, and he really understands the importance of connecting with the community and not only giving back, but helping the Army see the importance of being here.
And can you share any experience that you've had where the community and your and USARPAC and come together to actually solve a problem that they're kind of going through?
So I was here during COVID, and I would say when a lot of people were stay at home, social distancing, my job as public affairs had us out nonstop, working with the community to make sure that the messaging was on point and they understood, the importance of talking to the right audiences and making sure that the right message was being put out. Another time is just when we do training events, and we have to move a lot of equipment normally. So working with the local news agencies to make sure that the community knows that at this time there's going to be 40 vehicles on the road. So make sure that you either leave a little early or you can be a little late, because we're going to be out there, and just making sure that we're keeping the public informed on what we do.
I think that's one thing that it's important for the public is to be informed. I feel like sometimes we don't know exactly what's going on because it's such a complex. There's so many complexities to it, right?
There's a lot of moving parts.
Yeah, there's a lot of moving parts, and it's for us. We don't see all those moving parts, nor do we understand. Because there's just so much of it. And for yourself, what has been one of the most rewarding projects that you worked on so far within being part of USARPAC?
So for me, it goes back to telling the soldier story. So we have a yearly communications competition where individuals are graded on their ability to write or photography or videography. And my soldiers at that point won USARPAC. They almost took every single category in USARPAC, and then for the Army level competition that is graded by Headquarters Department of the Army, we won Writer of the Year, Photographer of the Year, and UPAR, which is somebody that's not officially public affairs but trained to execute the duties. So seeing that, being here on this island, and the beautiful backgrounds that added to our photos, I know that played a role. So knowing that, and just being here in Hawaii, I wish I would have bought back in 2019. Let me tell you. So we're looking again right now to see if we can make it happen. But we've been here for about a year, and just always taking that chance to go out and see what the island has to offer is a priority.
Yeah, I think that's one thing that when we talk about Army military, as local communities, we usually see it as the Army or the military, just more of in a taking away kind of position. And I think having these conversations and understanding exactly what's happening and the work that goes on beyond the things that we see is very helpful for me personally, because these are the types of things that I don't hear about or wouldn't know because we just don't hear about it, right? How important is it for you to have this collaboration with like local communities, such as like Hawaiian civic clubs or nonprofits or even schools, like creating that partnership with them is part of the mission of USARPAC?
Yeah, so it's one of the key pillars of being a responsible member of the community is that interaction. So going back to our partners in education, where soldiers go to school and they read to kids, or we're volunteering if we own on the side of the road to help clean up the side of the road. Going out and doing beach cleanup. We do all that stuff. So we're out there doing it, and unless you're following our social media, you're probably not going to see it, right?
Yeah.
We normally when you hear about the military on the island, it's through the news, through something bad happening, and we know that, and it's hard to see that, but it's expected when being in the Army, you grow up on the Army values, and you're supposed to be held to a higher standard. So when soldiers make a mistake, it's going to make the news, but we just ask the people to be patient. And there's a bad apple in every bunch sometimes, but majority of us are here to be a part of the community, to help, and to just love the island.
Yeah, and I really appreciate that, even for you just to say that, of you having that perspective. And that means a lot to me personally, so I appreciate that. One of the things that is very important, because you just brought up this whole, the presence of military being on the Hawaiian Islands, having this big tension, right? And being a sensitive topic. And I think that's why this macro podcast is so important, is to have these conversations and to bring awareness to the different branches that are doing the work within the communities and bring community members in to kind of see how they are working and partnering with the with military branches and institutions. How do you deal with that skepticism?
I just tried to be transparent and have a conversation, and it might not go anywhere, but at least I know I tried to do my part to meet them in the middle or even go a little bit over. Like I said, one of our favorite beaches is Makua up on the west side, and that's very local area. But never had a bad time, never had a bad experience. If somebody is up there with their native Hawaiian flag, I try to engage with in conversation and explain to them, because they know I'm military. They can tell off the bat. So just starting that conversation with them to let them know, hey, we appreciate everything, and we're happy to be here.
Yeah, and I think that's all it comes down to, is having these conversations, or in Hawaii like we call talk star, because it just brings us down to the same level, seeing eye to eye, and making that connection, and sharing what we call that aloha spirit with one another, and seeing like, okay, we are on this island, we're in the Hawaii together. How can we make the best out of it? Yeah, and I think you being able to be one of the leaders out there and leading by example, like you said, it works from the top down, right? So model for doing that.
I appreciate it.
And lastly, if there is one more thing that you can tell the civilians of the community about USARPAC and how they're helping out or being part of the community, what would that be?
I would just say that, we have a long history of being here. Somewhat of Pacific Forces came in around 1907. Fort Shafter's been here since 1911. So we've been here a long time. We rotate out a lot, so sometimes it takes time to get that new leader to understand the importance of what we're doing here. But normally we try to bring people back that have already been here to understand the importance of connecting with the community. But if we're ever hosting an event, or if you have any information, reach out to us through our social media pages, and we'll let you know what's going on to make sure that you can, we'll bridge that divide.
I really appreciate your time and also your service, Sergeant Major Porch, and just sharing this space with me, because this is all new for me as well, learning about what the military institutions do, and just kind of trying to grow myself, and to understand how can we work better together. So I really appreciate your time.
Yeah, I really appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Mahalo, thank you.